How strict were your parents? Strict, no. Beat the fuck out of me on a daily basis. Yes. Nothing wrong with being strict, as the parents are just trying to do their best for the kids. It can be a bit much, but the kid is way too young to understand and just sees it as never being allowed to do something specific, or having to do something when they'd rather be doing something else. That parental guidance, you'd either have to be an incredibly switched on child from the get-go, or to have already lived a wasted life to now appreciate the guidance, which is just a fantasy. Childhood away. Even launch interrogation-style methods over simple stuff, a reason I don't bend as easily. Another reason why he was strict, I developed a rebellious and sneaky nature due to him. I grew up in a very protective and religious household. I could never stay over at anyone's house. I couldn't go out with friends unless my parents knew their parents. I didn't have to have a curfew because I'd have to come straight home after school unless I had to work. I got beat a lot too. I remember I was terrified to make any mistakes, no matter how big or small. Of course my parents don't remember that, but whatever. Now that I'm 22, I look back on how that shaped who I am today. I'm an introverted, anxious all the damn time and scared to mess up. Depended on the issue. I could drink, smoke weed, go out as late as I wanted with whoever I wanted. I was allowed to have house parties and all my friends were allowed to drink at my house. Smoking cigarettes was not allowed, so I snuck that. I also snuck bows in, but was allowed to have guy friends sleep over at both friends' houses, so not sure why I snuck guys in too. When they found out I was bisexual though, that was an issue. When I shaved my head, that was an issue. Basically it was do whatever you want as long as you don't make us look bad. I was grounded for the entire 7th and 9th grades. 7th grade was due to poor grades. 9th grade was due to failing English and Spanish. Now, my parents agree that my teacher was out to get me, and it was clear that she was grading me on a tougher curve than everyone else. She would ask a short answer question and myself and a classmate could give the same basic answer. He would be correct and I would be wrong. As for Spanish ... I just didn't have the talent for learning other languages. I have tried Japanese, Russian, French, of them too. Stepdad was a military hard-ass narcissist. He would drag me out of bed by my hair if I wasn't up and active by 6 a.m. He'd have me mow the lawn and then inspect it afterwards. If I missed a single blade of grass, he'd make me do it all again, after which I would have to pay him for the extra gas spent and go without dinner or anything to drink. He told my girlfriend at the time, right in front of me no less, that she was wasted on a useless little shit like me ... So yeah, pretty strict. Most everyone else in my family is thankfully not half as crazy as him. I've got a couple cigarette burn scars for crying whilst being whooped for not finishing my dinner, and a mild concussion from my stepdad by throwing me off of his back onto a tile floor. He wasn't focusing on his homework, so I leapt onto his back when I saw that, and had started punching him in the back of the head to get him to let go of my brother. My bio dad was fine though. Strictish rules, but mostly only being grounded for punishments. My mum told me to clean my room when I was little, so I decided to use a broom, and when she found out she started screaming and slamming the broom on the ground yelling. I still don't know why. Tea like it, and there wasn't any room in the fridge, so my mum woke me up around 11:00 at night and got it out of the trash, put it on a plate, and told me that I wasn't allowed to sleep until I ate it all. My parents also constantly accused me of lying about everything until I was around 17 years old. From about ages 5-13, my parents were incredibly religious and incredibly strict. Southern Baptist, at church for days a week for one service activity or another. Was not allowed to consume most secular media. Then my brother started playing a travel sport and everything went out the window. Of them stepped foot in a church. And my brother was a much harder kid to raise, so I was suddenly given a lot of independence, sometimes so much so that I wondered if they cared what happened to me. My parents had strong opinions, but I wouldn't say they were strict. Mostly my dad though. My dad used to hate that I spend most of my time gaming and on the internet. The usual comments that it's childish, grow up, sad, etc., etc. Though he never actually stopped me doing those things. Just wished I'd do something else. He's definitely mellowed out. When I was around 16, he'd pop his head into my room and ask what I was playing. Now I'm 28, and he still asks what games I'm currently playing or if I've played X or Y new game. At the time I thought they were strict, but now looking back they really weren't. They were just parenting, and constantly thwarting my attempts to find interesting ways to die. I was allowed a lot more freedom than a lot of my friends, within reason. As a 15-year-old, I was literally allowed to go into the forest 2 days at a time with a mate of mine. We would camp, hunt and fish. It was great fun. But if I mentioned going to a party where there was a high potential to get hooked on drugs and alcohol, and it was a big no. I'm an EDD, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Couldn't dress this way. I couldn't go as Frankenstein. I go only listen to Christian music, and can't sing outside of church unless I'm singing in church. Why? Because my parents were strict on me on everything. My parents believed all the things I've listened were demonic, monsters, a sign of the devil, SpongeBob is gay, bringing darkness into the world. I blame the Christian media channel that my parents would watch. I was raised Southern Baptist. I was taken to a church every weekend until I was 10, and yelled at by churchgoers as we were entering the church every week. Without fail, you're going to hell, sinner, sinner. Sex ed, sexual health, mental health, and anything that had to do with fantasy worlds were all banned. I knew at a young age that this wasn't normal. I'm now in a loving relationship with someone who encourages my health and interests, and I no longer have to abusive parents. Depends on how you look at it. Didn't have any rules growing up really. Certainly no structure, no bedtime, no coming home time. I was allowed to sleep in the woods as a child if I wanted. No questions around school or homework, etc. Essentially left to my own devices. But if I'd done anything to upset her, then the beatings with weapons and insults come swiftly and harshly. So not strict in that I didn't have any specific rules. Very strict for doing anything that may upset. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say a 7. They had clear-cut rules, limits, boundaries, and all that good stuff, as well as consequences for when they were broken. I can count on one hand the number of times I've been grounded. That being said, my parents allowed me to choose my interests and did not try to live vicariously through me. They allowed me to do things other kids did, yet never gave me a curfew. I easily earned the trust of my parents without breaking it. My brother and I were to eat dinner at the dinner table with our parents. We had to eat everything off our plates in order to ask to be excused. If we didn't eat everything, we would sit at the table until bedtime, and would have to have the food be our only option the next day, or until it was gone. Mind you, my father in the military and an abusive alcoholic who beat my mother and constantly put us in strangers' homes for the night because they couldn't stop fighting. Not strict at all, but firm where needed to be. With my parents, and they knew when this was happening. They trusted me to not take it too far because they knew me, and I never ever did. I knew their boundaries and I respected and never crossed them. I grew up very close to my parents, and still as close to them at 25, and I'm very aware how lucky I'm to have that. They weren't strict with small, surface-type things. We could watch basically whatever we wanted. My mother never paid attention, but they were strict when it came to things like honesty. Honesty was the most important rule in my house growing up. As long as you are honest and weren't taking advantage. They were pretty good about letting us do a bunch of things. We were good kids and they knew that, so they were happy to give us some leeway. Strict Christian parents with high morals and standards, but also Asian, so slipper, wooden ruler, spatula. I wasn't allowed to attend prom. No dates until 18. Always stray home from school unless plans were made 24 hours in advance. Chores, as well as paying rent once I had an after-school job. My rent was making sure we had bread every day, 8 loaves a week. My brother's rent was to make sure there was always Coca-Cola stocked up. I once got grounded because I untucked my shirt after I left. My parents literally followed me to a restaurant to bust me for untucking my shirt. I was then told that from then on, before I left the house, I was to stand in front of them and turn around so they could confirm my shirt was tucked in. That was 30 years ago. I have a significantly better relationship with my parents these days. We laugh about the shirt tail thing. Dad couldn't care less most of the time. Very relaxed, overall chill. Mum, I am now fairly good at lying on the spot and can subconsciously recognize anyone's footsteps from sound alone. Also ended up learning how to forge signatures so I wouldn't have to get her to sign shit for school that I didn't want her seeing. Overall, not the worst, all things considered, but I definitely have issues talking to people because of my mother. My mum and dad both were separately lenient on things I didn't think they would be. My mum allowed me to stay at my boyfriend's house when I was 16-17 without my dad knowing. Police for selling pot. And my dad picked me up. I wasn't in any trouble. He was more mad that I was at my boyfriend's past 8 p.m. with an overnight bag than he was that I was involved in a police raid.